In this diagnostic segment, we're going to talk about the flashing red, green, red. It's the last error fault on the chart. And this occurs when the system has overheated. And there are a couple of conditions that will occur to cause it to overheat. And one of them is could happen when the brine tank is empty. It runs out of salt water, and water continues to try to be pumped through the cell. The cell begins losing volume of liquid, but amperage is still occurring on the cell. Power is still applied. So with less salt water in the cell, and it's not really circulating through the cell, it'll sit there and create a lot of heat in the disinfectant inside the cell. So we have a thermal well. This is a device that measures the temperature of the solution coming out of the outside of the cell. And if it gets too hot, to protect the system from damage, this light will alarm as a flashing red, green, red, and the system will shut down. So that is the primary condition. It is an over temperature condition in the cell. Now the second major source of problems with this is that the flow in the cell is blocked. Now this occurs usually under only one condition, that is that scale has formed in the cell or in the fittings or in the tubing here. And you'll notice that the tubing is clear here, but when it begins to get blocked, it'll have a cream or white color inside the tubing. And that's a strong indication that scale is forming in the cell. Scale occurs two different ways. One is in the salt. So calcium contaminants may be in the salt itself, and that's a source of calcium carbonate scale to form in the cell. And the other is using hard water, water with a lot of hardness, a lot of scale in the water. And both of them, when they get into the cell and electrolysis is occurring, there are conditions at one of the electrodes, the cathode electrode, where scale will form. And it can accumulate over time and ultimately cause restriction in the flow out of the cell. Now when it restricts the flow like that, the flow rate is slower, there's not as much heat being removed in the liquid, and it'll get warm coming out. So the temperature is monitored again with the thermal well, and if it gets too warm, then the system will shut down and you will see the red, green, red flashing light. So when that occurs, if it was simply a brine tank running out of brine, then that's usually the problem. But if the brine tank has brine in it and it's been running, and you see white calcium forming in the tubing or fitting, it's time to acid wash the system. And we'll cover acid washing in a separate segment.